covering everything Ukraine today.
That's right.
Starting from Bakhmut, the G7 summit, onto who's profiting from all this stuff.
And then some future outlook as well.
Yeah. We have a new addition to our podcast. His name is Daniel.
Hello.
He's off camera. You won't see him, but you'll definitely hear him.
Indeed.
So yeah, let's get started.
Let's jump into it.
So Zelensky appeared at the G7 summit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was given a lot of money by specifically America. I think another 375 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this whole topic of Bakhmut, the way I understand it, it's basically been like hotly contested grounds for the past 9 months almost, right? And both sides say, like right now, Russia is saying, oh, we're already like waving our Russian flag there. You know, it's over. Putin already congratulated the troops. They're preparing the military awards. But Ukraine is like, no, we still have our stronghold. We're still fighting hard. We're planning on continuing the counteroffensive.
I mean, to me, it kind of sounds a little bit silly because Bakhmut is a region that's been contested ever since the start of the war, just because it's right on the front line. Daniel, you could probably find a map, or like right at the front line of the war between Russia and Ukraine, and we'll throw it up. But point being, it's just been a hot zone for a really long time, and Russia, Ukraine keeps saying that it's theirs. One says that it's been taken, and one says it hasn't. I think it doesn't matter, honestly. In the scope of the war, it doesn't matter.
Right. So here's the thing. This is actually something I wanted to ask you. So right now, and I'm pretty sure Zelensky said this at the summit. He was like, Bakhmut is basically like, it's such a war zone. They've been fighting there for so long. Everything is destroyed. Like all of the buildings there are destroyed. All of the infrastructure, like it's gone. So it's just like a pure war zone. So is this some kind, like to me, it seems like it's something almost, I don't know if sentimental is the right word, but it's like it's more than just, you know, a tactical advantage to have that land.
Exactly. I mean, well, first of all, Bakhmut is completely decimated. Unfortunately, it's literally just buildings, and as Zelensky joked, there are a lot of Russian troops on the ground.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, if it took Russia 9 months to take, this is a small city, it's 70,000 people who live there. If it took Russia 9 months to take a city like that, and what did they take? They didn't take any strategic positions.
Exactly.
They destroyed everything. At that rate, it'll take them, I mean, I don't know how many decades to get through the rest of Ukraine. It's pathetic, honestly.
Yeah, so this kind of brings me to something else that I was actually looking into, which is, you know, as you said, like, it's taken Russia 9 months to get Bakhmut, and they're planning on, you know, completely demilitarizing Ukraine, whatever, but as we can see, Ukraine is proving to be very resilient. From other countries' perspectives, because Russia is actually, I believe, as of 2020, was the #2 like arms dealer in the world. Like, if you're in other countries, I think they ship to India, China, I don't remember, like other countries, right, where they're trying to get influence. Them looking at how effective these Russian equipment are in their military, like, why would that market for those weapons continue?
Well, I mean, the Russian equipment is a joke.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what
Yeah.
it's proving to be.
So it's horrible for them. I think right now they're leaning on their oil very, very heavily, and they've become more of a petrostate than ever. We've seen that they don't have enough industry to survive when they're cut off from everything else. And I think that we could even tie this into Bakhmut, right? So let's take Russian news sources, right? Daniel, there's a ton of articles on specifically how Russia's reporting on Bakhmut. Putin put out a statement saying that congratulations to thank you for everyone who took part in this, whatever. He has to show that they're making some form of progress, right? Just for the people to not lose faith, because they're thinking in Ukraine we're not moving forward, we're not advancing. He has to put something out, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think that their industry is just as suspended by media as Ukraine's support, as Ukraine's aid is, right?
Right.
Because, and I want to end this off with a question for you, but right. So Ukraine is reporting that Bakhmut has been taken, that Russia's pushing, right? In order for aid to get through them, right?
Right. But they don't, like, Ukraine doesn't say it's completely taken. Like, they still say they have their own troops within there, and they're still fighting. Like, they're not just accepting it as lost territory.
Right. But I guess my point is that typically when you see headlines from a Russian source and a Western source or Ukrainian source, they're almost polar opposites. The majority of the time, they're saying completely opposite things, like anything ranging from the Olympics to war. So it's difficult to know who to believe. So who do you think is really in control of Bakhmut? Who has the upper hand then?
Okay, when it comes to upper hand, I mean, are you saying this like in terms of the motivations for each country? Like in terms of Ukraine, they're using it to get what they want in terms of funding and more military equipment? Or are you saying like who's actually in control of the region, like right now, military presence wise?
Both.
Okay, so I think Russia probably does have like in general control of the region, but I think Ukraine will still continue with the missile attacks and whatever other methods they're using, and they're not just going to give up and let Russia have it. But I think both countries. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't call it a win for Ukraine, but I do know they just got approved for F-16s, and they're going to
Which they promised not to send into Russia, by the way.
Right.
Before they gave them the planes, because now they're concerned about Ukraine's counteroffensive moves, like I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So now they literally made Zelensky promise that he wouldn't send them over Russia.
Right, and I think Biden had said that he doesn't think they would have helped in Bakhmut either. So in terms of that, I guess that's kind of a win for them in a way in terms of getting more funding. But I mean, like you said, like that land doesn't really do anything for them right now anyway. It's just like a sentimental victory for Russia, I guess. For Russia's perspective, like, and I know Daniel on Argumenta and Ifakta and like a few other sources where I was looking.
That's a Russian news source.
Yeah, it's a Russian like state-owned news source. They're using it to say basically, it's like a statement win in a way for Russia in terms of how they're framing it. And I believe, Daniel, maybe you can find the exact city. I don't remember, but this is like the anniversary of this time last year they had also taken control of another Ukrainian city. I don't recall which one, but yeah, they're framing it as like a moral, victory, and that's kind of, if you're Putin and you want to keep your people in line, like these are the kinds of things that you need to do.
But what I don't understand, and I mean, I'm not really one for conspiracy theories, but what is Russia fighting for at this point? I mean, we've heard like it's the war of one man, all this stuff. It's egotistical. You can't pull out now. But they cannot keep fighting at this rate. At the rate they can't compete with Western equipment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if
clearly.
Ukraine's getting the support, like you said, these new fighter jets, they're getting tanks, and Russia has these, rusty
Right.
equipment that they have rolling through combat fields. How long can Russia keep this up, and why? They're just harming themselves at this point.
Yeah, the thing is, I think Russia might be concerned that if they give up now, in terms of like the public perception within Russia, it might lead to a lot of civil distress. Like there should already be, honestly, like a lot of controversy in Russia, which I'm sure there is. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, if you're a Russian citizen and your government, and it's like you view Russia as like this big, huge, like military power, and like you're remembering the days when it was going head to head with the United States during the the space race, whatever else, the Cold War. If you're losing to Ukraine, which is like your little next door neighbor that Russia told you they're liberating, like,
It's embarrassing.
it is embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. And a lot of Russian citizens, they effectively don't have a place to go. I mean, the drafts are terrifying. They're pulling people out of their homes and sending them to the field where they're almost destined to die.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. And the thing is, a lot of people are profiting off of this on both sides. It's, I mean, huge sums of money in the order of billions.
Yes.
It's crazy. And not just governments, I mean, but private companies as well. Defense contractors, the food industry, hedge funds.
Yeah, so I actually have some figures on this. So I looked into companies that are basically defense contractors that receive government contracts to supply Ukraine with weapons. So listen to these numbers. Lockheed Martin, U.S. company, $8.8 billion contract.
Wait, that's how much they received
Yes, to
produce
supply for Ukraine. Raytheon Technologies, $6.9 billion. BAE Systems, which is a UK company, $4.4 billion. Leonardo, which is in Italy, $3.5 billion. And it's interesting, if you look at the share prices of these various companies, Lockheed Martin, for example, it reached a peak, it was like end of May after the war started, not this May. They reached about 21% increase in share price. Now they're coming back down to about...
From the start of the war?
Yes, from the start of the war.
Okay.
Now they're coming back to about 10%. There's Rheinmetall, which is a German defense contractor. which also received a contract to produce weapons for Ukraine.
Wait, America gave a German company a contract?
No, from the German government.
Okay.
Their share price went up to date 89% from the start of the war. So we can see like it's definitely in their best interests, what's going on to continue producing, arms and other military equipment, which is interesting to see. I wouldn't go so far as to say that, they have some kind of influence and like are trying to keep the war going, but you can't deny that it's advantageous.
It definitely, and it's not just defense contractors. Obviously, for them, this is like a historical win, and it's not even a local war. It's thankfully not a war that America's fighting on their land. So they're getting the economic growth without really the loss that they would suffer otherwise.
Right.
Another huge sector that profited off of this, and Daniel, let me know if you could find specific hedge funds that made these investments.
Yes.
But right when food prices started spiking in Ukraine, a ton of hedge funds put their assets into these industries, and the people who are paying for this are people who live in poverty, and are people who can't afford this food in the first place. All the grain that was going from Ukraine into Africa, and again, I have here a $1.5 billion profit.
Yes. From the food price spike, and I think it's a lot to do with the wheat production, because Ukraine, I believe, is like 20% of global wheat production, and when the war started and that kind of shrunk, the price of wheat shot up. Let me find the numbers. From about 892 to 1,277 US dollars per bushel. That was like the immediate impact. By now, it already came back down, but like you said, the hedge funds already made their profits. Like they were quick to invest.
Dan, did you find who invested?
I'm trying to look. I'm not sure. I'm seeing the same articles as you guys about like these crazy figures, but I'm not seeing specific ones just yet.
Right. And if you look at companies within the U.S. that produce wheat and other agriculture businesses, Deere & Co., if you know, is a big one. Their share price went up about 30%, like immediately after the war, when that huge food spike happened, the price spike happened. Now it's down to like 3%. So things, came back down to earth in a way. And there are a few other, like if you look at agriculture companies, like the share price quickly shot up, and then, time went on and it's trickling back.
But it's interesting to see how this is all fueled by sort of sentiment. And back to what I was saying about how the media is sort of controlling what's said in Bakhmut. And are you familiar with Prigozhin, Yevgeny Prigozhin?
Yes.
So exactly. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar, there's a private military contractor called the Wagner Group, headed by this guy Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's a criminal, by the way.
Right. And this is basically Putin's private army.
Exactly.
His personal. Yeah.
Exactly. So this guy Prigozhin releases videos of him on the front lines, and these videos are shown to Russians, to native Russians. And then you have the Western media doing their equivalent of explaining what Russia's doing. But all of this hangs on a very, very delicate thread, and it controls where money flows, right? So, for example, there was a strike on Russian territory, right? We can assume that it was done by Ukrainian forces, right? Ukraine didn't immediately take
responsibility.
Exactly, they didn't. But the way that Russia reported it in Argument and Ifakta, this state-owned newspaper, is that it was just a fire on their territory. The word Ukraine wasn't mentioned anywhere in the article, right?
Right.
Whereas Western sources were reporting it as Ukraine, they're assuming that Ukraine took the strike, because Russia doesn't want to show that vulnerability.
Exactly. This comes back to what we were talking about. It's embarrassing for them. Like this, the lengths that this war has gone on for already, and like the damage that Russia is taking, is embarrassing for the country because of the way that they are trying to present themselves to their own citizens. So it's interesting to see.
And also moving forward, with all of like those defense companies, for example, right? And everything moving forward, Western industry, as well as the money that's being poured into Ukraine, where are these tanks going to go after the war, right? Presumably Ukraine is going to keep them.
Right.
So moving forward, I don't know. Obviously, we can't forecast when this war is going to end. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But the point is, Ukraine is going to be immensely strong after the war.
Strong. See, it's hard for me to say that. Their GDP has contracted by, I think it's like 35-40% in 2022. Inflation reached 20%. in the country. They're losing a ton of their infrastructure, and like they're fighting tooth and nail. What do you mean by strong?
Well, obviously that, I mean, look, they're in war, they can't do anything
Right.
about the fact that their gross domestic product is going to be plummeting, but I'm saying that they have the resources to really take off. I mean, if you look at, other
Like
places...
geographically, location-wise?
That too, but effectively the entire European Union and NATO, for that fact, should sort of really be thankful for Ukraine, because Ukraine is a buffer between the European
Yes.
Union and Russia, right? They're pouring all this money in primarily to protect themselves, as well as Ukraine.
Mhm.
Because if Russia does make it past Ukraine, then they can feast on the...
I mean, that was always the idea. Like, don't make the same mistakes as in World War II. What was it? Appeasement, I think the policy was called.
Yeah.
Where basically, they were telling Hitler, no, don't invade, but then he would, and they were too scared to kind of really jump in. So yeah, I mean, it's something to think about for sure. I mean, I don't see them joining NATO.
But no, I don't...
That's not the point necessarily.
Exactly.
The point is the resources that they'll have access to, and I think especially I think it definitely united the country a lot.
Yes, that's what I was gonna
Zelensky
say.
is like a hero now in Ukraine, and he has been for the past year or so. So now they have like this young, democratic, personable leader who's coming up, and it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. It also, a lot of it, I think, in terms of how strong they will depend on the terms of which the war is ending. Like if they're able to make Russia make some concessions or agree to some kind of like recovery support for Ukraine, that would be huge for them.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about Zelensky, he really showed the type of leader that he is.
Mhm.
I mean, he was basically on the front lines right when the war started,
Yeah.
and now he's traveling and making sure that his country has the support they need. And if I remember correctly, he wasn't immensely popular before
was
this
not.
war.
I think there might have been protests.
Exactly, and
Amazing.
now he's really shown the person that he is in this time of struggle. But I think that now he's going to be like he's going to go down in history as probably one of the world's greatest leaders, just for what he's doing with Ukraine. But keep in mind all this funding that they have, and they're going to have a very strong army after this, like after all is
Right.
said and done with this war, right? The sense of nationalism that you said. I think Ukraine can be in an amazing place to be a world leader, because everyone who left wants to come back, right?
Okay.
And I think that they have the money to become a real epicenter within Europe.
So what kind of role would you see them playing going forward?
I can see them...
They already have their wheat production. I could see them getting more involved in terms of oil and other natural resources.
I think that they're going to see a lot of young talent come in and come back. They had a huge IT sector, right? So people who were coding and things like that. But I also think that they're going to be sort of a national symbol for peace. Whether or not that's true, people can have different opinions. But I think that the United Nations is going to want to have a lot to do with them. I think you're going to see a lot more conferences there. Ukraine is just going to be the symbol of
Right.
when the world united against evil.
Right.
This is what we have.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so already, it's like, say what you will about the media, then we kind of already had a conversation about this. Ukraine is doing, I would say, a really good job in terms of like positioning themselves, media-wise, and like making. Zelensky is a great speaker, and at all of these events, he's making like these passionate speeches. So yeah, I think Ukraine can really start to be seen as a symbol of peace and like what can come from really dark places.
The only danger I can see for Ukraine is how in my opinion, Russia's army is going to start to fade at some point, right? When they break down all the BS barriers and the propaganda that they have, all that stuff,
Okay.
they can't keep fighting forever. If Ukraine pushes further than necessary into Russia to defend themselves, I think that will be a problem for them. I think that will be the wrong image.
Pushes further how?
In
like
the sense,
reclaiming their own territory?
past that.
I don't
If they
think
go
would
past
do
that.
I don't see them doing that. Going
Why not?
into Russia and taking
Yes.
Russia's territory?
Yes.
Because I mean that's in terms of like how they've been positioning themselves and framing the narrative. And I mean it's true. I don't think that they want Russia's land. I think they genuinely just want to be left alone and get back, even Krim and whatever other territories that had been annexed for a while now. I think they just want to get back on their feet already, like put this whole thing to bed and start to rebuild. I don't think that, because here's the thing, I don't think they have the resources to start pushing into Russia. Like that's the reason why Russia is struggling against Ukraine partially, is like it takes like around a 3-to-1, like, what's it called? Advantage, like 3 people to 1 defense.
3 Russians against 1 Ukrainian, you mean?
Well, if Russia is attacking, but
Okay.
if Ukraine is attacking, like they don't have that kind of numbers advantage that Russia does.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. Russia simply has the fact that they have power numbers. They're drafting a lot of people, and they have some form of military equipment. Ukraine has immensely advanced drone systems, right? Daniel, you could probably find a picture of that. Sorry, not drone systems. Specifically, missiles that intercept other missiles.
Yes.
Right. Because of the funding that they're getting from the West. And like I said before, Russia is slowly draining their resources, and Ukraine is slowly replenishing to multiples of what they had before. So at some point, Russia is going to be far weaker than Ukraine, and Ukraine is going to be immensely strong militarily.
True, yeah, but I just don't see it happening. Like, if let's say, for example, God forbid China invades Taiwan. Like, I wouldn't, and Taiwan gets the same kind of support. Like, I wouldn't see Taiwan trying to go and push into China and get Chinese territory. Like, it just, I think it's very uncommon to see, like, the little guy in the situation trying to get that bigger piece. And I don't think that would work out well for them.
But then, what do we see of Russia? After, like,
The bully. Russia is the bully.
okay, well, for example, right? Let's say Russia already has sanctions opposed to them. They're already draining their resources.
Right.
Let's say, for example, Russia stops fighting. They can no longer fight. Who do they have support from? What happens to the people who live there? What happens to the government there?
Support China. Well, I mean, the whole BRICS countries. Daniel.
Yeah, to circle back to what you said, David. Ukraine said this past Tuesday that it has shut down 6 Russian Kinzhal missiles. It's like this new hypersonic missile that they've developed. So it's like Russia's using these new weapons and Ukraine's just kind of shutting them down as it is right now.
Wait, Russia developed a new missile?
Yes, I believe so.
I don't know.
And Ukraine has been intercepting them.
Yes, and Ukraine said on Tuesday that it has shot down 6 of them.
Yeah, I think Ukraine's air defense system
Yeah.
is very advanced.
It is.
Wow.
Interesting, yeah. But yeah, and I don't think Ukraine would also receive the same kind of Western support from trying to invade Russia.
Exactly.
I just don't see it happen.
Yes. That's what I mean. Where they can, if they take it the wrong way, that could be bad for them. But otherwise, I think they have everything they need to really be a very powerful nation as is.
And actually, to circle back to what you guys have said earlier about Russian propaganda, it's like the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said that this missile in fact did hit something that was built by the U.S. Located in Kyiv. So it just goes to show how Ukraine can say one thing, then Russia will say the polar opposite, and it's like, who to believe?
Right.
Exactly. And it goes back to the funding that Ukraine receives.
Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in to this new episode of Keep It a Buck. This is our first installation of the War Room segment, so you'll see it coming back. You'll also see Daniel coming back in future episodes. Daniel.
Here.
Pleasure being here. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Daniel. And yeah, thank you for watching. Remember, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Feel free to use the comments to tell us any more stuff that you want us to look into.
And we'll be following up on the debt ceiling episode that we did when we do our roundtable this week.
June 1st is around the corner, so we'll see how that goes.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.